and welcome to the Build and Exit podcast. I'm Julie Wilkinson and I'm your host. I'm the owner and founder of Wilkinson Accounting Solutions, and I started the podcast off the back of the work we do in my company, Wilkinson Accounting Solutions. We specialise in M&A, and we realised there was a gap in the market of financial understanding across business owners, entrepreneurs and investors. So we've had lots of guests. It's October 23. I'm really excited because we got over 2,000 listeners in 4 months. So it's been really good this year, and we're looking to expand the show. But today I have Robert Rizea with me. Hi, Robert.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Julie.
Thanks for coming on.
Having me.
No, you're welcome. So I've asked Robert to come on the show because he, in 2020, launched a company called RacketPal. It's in sports tech, helping expand people that play racket sports. And interestingly, he's had to go through a few number of rounds of funding. So across 2 years, raised about £2 million successfully. And the last round was about a year ago. So he's now been trading a year with that funding. So we're going to talk a bit about why he went for the funding, all pros and cons of things he went through to get the funding. And I think it'll be really useful for the listeners, startups or just people looking for funding through sort of angel or venture capitalists, of what type of things to expect. So, Robert,
Absolutely.
first,
I'm here.
Yeah. So I'll hand over to you, Robert, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, starting with myself and why we actually started RacketPal. So I played tennis professionally when I was younger. I studied in the US. I played college tennis there. All my background being within the marketing and growth, paid acquisition and paid media. So I was, before RacketPal, that's what I was doing. I moved to London. I did my master's degrees there and started working as well. And then end of 2019, 2020, I wasn't playing tennis anymore because of injuries and because I realized I'm not going to be at Andy Murray's level. But then I wanted to still play and get back in shape. And I just knew no one that I could play with that was my level. It was just complicated to find people based on their availabilities, their level, their location. I didn't know where to play. And then I met, luckily, my co-founder, who is also a squash and a badminton player. He had the same issues. He's the tech person, I'm the marketing person, and it's always good to have both sides in a company. So we started off as a passion project, as a part-time project. We had both our full-time jobs. We said, why don't we do this part-time? And it started growing without us doing so much in the beginning. We went to we had a few thousand users while doing it part-time. Someone suggested, guys, this has a big potential. We heard it a few times, and then we really thought about maybe we give it a real shot, but for that we need some money to survive and to move full-time, and that's how it all started. But that's it in a nutshell.
Well, that's interesting that you plan to know you need the money, because you'd be surprised how many businesses are building that haven't really got that plan. So how did you, first of all, plan how much you thought you needed in terms of funds?
Well, we didn't. So actually we said, we didn't know from the beginning that we needed money. So we said, let's move full-time. We gave up our full-time jobs. We moved full-time as RacketPal. And we said, okay, together, myself and Bogdan, we have X amount of money. How long will that last us for, and how can we make it longer? So we moved in together. I moved in at his place, actually. So we cut the costs and we lived together for like 4 or 5 months. So we really could give it our all, spend the money that we had and cut the costs. And then we realized our money is running out very soon. Money ran out. And then we said, okay, we really want to do this. We really believe in it. It was still growing while I moved in with him. And then we said, we need some money to survive. What do we need the money for? Where we need money for us to survive, pay ourselves the minimum salary in London that someone can eat and live. And then we need help from like a part-time designer. We need help from a part-time developer. And we need this to last for, 12, 14 months so that we don't need to go through the whole process. And that's how we came up with the first figure that was, I think, about 150K in initial funding. So, and that was it.
It's good that you did that, though. I mean, I don't know if have you ever read any of Elon Musk's books or heard any of his podcasts that he talks on. When he was well, I don't know how far I can't remember because I haven't read the full book yet, but I heard like snippets on his podcasts. And he moved in. He lived in this office space, and he was apparently he was borrowing money from friends to pay the rent at that time because all the money was going to SpaceX and a Tesla. So all the good entrepreneurs do it. So it sounds like, although you might not have had an official plan, I think you probably planned a bit more than you thought, because to actually do that and move in, share apartments together and stuff to save money, theoretically you are planning. You might not have had like a 10-page business plan, but you did have some form of plan, so that was good. So
survival, it's called survival.
Yeah. Anyway, so you then needed this 150k at the first round. So what did you do?
Well, and then we struggled because we knew nothing about raising money. It looked a lot like, well, people would look it looked a lot like begging in the beginning, because there's also a process of raising this money, not just, hey, give me money, please, please, please. And then that's how I pretty much did it in the beginning, with a lot of please and giving the money but I learned. But I'm a quick learner. I don't know things, but I'm a quick learner. It took us a long time. The first round, it took us 7 months. Actually, we were almost about to put a stop to it, but luckily, because there was just no more money left for us to survive on, and we needed some jobs, or at least some income coming in for any of us. But luckily we managed to. The question was how we managed to raise the first 150k, right? Mm-hmm. Luckily we found someone that has been through the process before, worked on the VC side. And that was a few months after we tried doing it ourselves, and we didn't have any success. He taught us the basics of fundraising, that you need a deck, like the basics. You need a pitch deck, you need a blurb, an email with bullet points, you need to call outreach, you need to understand the criteria, the investment criteria of either the people or the VCs, but it was too early for a VC, so some people only invest in XYZ, and reach out to those, like don't just blast hundreds of millions to everybody. There's angel investments, you need to think of valuation, you need to have financial projections, like just the basics. We've done all of that. We worked for a few months. We put fundraising in a stop. We worked for a month at literally preparing with his help. And that is when we went much more prepared into meetings and I started going to the face-to-face events, to the social events. I started reaching out on LinkedIn. I started calling people, cold emailing, and I realized at that point, which it was an important realization, that it's a numbers game. Out of considering a 5% conversion rate of people answering an email, then how many of them actually invest? If you reach 100 people, 10 of them, let's say, answer your emails. Out of them, 2 of them take a second call, and maybe you are lucky and 1 of them invests. So if you apply these conversion rates and each step, then you realize it is a numbers game. You need to reach 1,000 people, maybe to have 1 or 2 or 3 investors. In the beginning, when you have nothing, when you barely have any traction, when it's just your word and you have very little traction and product and MVP against money. So, but yeah, we managed to find someone that has been with us throughout the journey, an incredible initial angel who has invested in all the rounds after that, from the Czech Republic, who is a tennis player. So you need to also understand, okay, well, you try to speak and reach out to people who are interested in the space, who are, well, who love the space. It will get you further. And, but yeah, so that was it. That was it in a nutshell, the first money. And then after that, we managed to grow. We raised two additional rounds, totaling 2 million, a bit, I think over 2 million up until today.
Did you get, when you were cold calling trying to fund, did you get a lot of backlash from that? People that are just hanging up on you and wasn't interested?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But I never had... I'm the extrovert between myself and my co-founders, so I never had the issue of the fear of rejection, and the fear of just people hanging up the phone. I just knew that the next person I call, the next person I reach out to, the next person I email could change my life, could change, we can get investment from that person. So with this mentality, I have no issues getting 1,000 no's if I know the 1,001th person I'm going to reach is going to say yes. I have no issue going through 1,000 no's before. Every single no is a learning process. Every single no I get, I ask myself, well, maybe I used the wrong wording. Maybe that didn't make sense. Maybe I was too pushy. So I'm trying to improve. Every single email, every single call, every single pitch I did, I was trying to improve, get feedback, retrospectively improve, try new things. So it was a learning process. And I think everybody needs to go through thousands of no's to actually raise funds or do something.
I'm really excited to announce that we have found our first collaboration. So Robert, who is a co-founder of RacketPal, has kindly offered our guests and listeners their own discount code specifically for his company, RacketPal. The reason I resonated and decided to collaborate with RacketPal is partly Robert's story. I always think the best businesses are built from a passion of love. And ultimately, Robert used to be a professional, semi-professional tennis player. And when he moved to London, he couldn't find people that he could play with or where to play the sport that he loved. And from there, he's built this amazing community that's now allowing other racket players to be able to find the right level and play the sport that they love and enjoy the most. So I'm really grateful that he's offered our listeners their own 50% discount code. So you can download RacketPal from app stores. And when you register, it will ask you for a discount code. So you can add in WILKPAL, which is WILKPAL. And from there, you get 50% off your annual subscription. And within the annual subscription, there's lots that you receive for that subscription. You can book coaching sessions, you have unlimited chat access, and you can find other players and matches that suit your level, age, location, etc. So I am so grateful that we've decided to keep this collaboration set up, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real inspirational message, because I think you'd be surprised how many people would potentially give up on the first few no's. My favourite quote ever, and I always say this, I watched Diary of a CEO, and Davina McCall went on, and I love Davina, and her quote was, whenever she gets a no, she doesn't see it as a no, she just sees it as a not now. I love that quote.
Yeah, I watched that,
really good.
the Diary of a CEO as well. It's good.
Yeah. But this is good because, you know, it's really important for you to understand that things don't just fall into people's lap. In the end, people make things happen. And, you know, this is why I wanted you to come on the show, because I think it's important for people to look at, you know, yes, it's great, you've got the funding, you're now on that journey to grow in the business, but you didn't always start that way. So, and now you're getting there. So you did the first round.
It's not a success in itself. Funding, it doesn't mean success. That is something that it means the work just starts now. You know, it was incredibly hard, and people just, I feel they're happy that they have a beer. Oh, we raised investment, but no, it's actually, I needed this money to make for the work to start, for the real work to start.
For now that you know what you've learned from these rounds of funding, if you were starting something new, so you were the person going into the investment round in the first place, what would you have changed at the beginning? Not for you necessarily, because obviously I know you don't have a regret necessarily of what you've done, but I'm saying if somebody else was going to start your journey, what would you recommend they have in place to start a funding round?
There's a few things I would do different from a funding perspective. There's a few things for sure I would do things different from a business perspective, because they found your business. So if I were to go back, because in every single funding round, I learned a lot about my business and how we should do things and what to look for and what are the KPIs. And every single funding round, it was dreadful, but it has taught me a lot of things. We would not be here if not for those investor discussions that said no, that said, think about this. I don't think it's a good idea. So in the first place, I would see it as a full-time job. Fundraising is at least one founder's full-time job, if not one full-time job and a half, because Bogdan also started doing the moment we realized how hard it could be, and it was. He started joining me as well. So treat it as a full-time job. And add 2-3 more months to your expected close date, because nothing ever goes as planned. And even if you have all the 10 people lined up that want to invest and they say, yes, I'm going to write a check for you tomorrow, there comes the legal stuff. There comes the legal negotiations. There comes term sheets, and all it implies. I had to learn a completely new language when it comes to raising a price round, like a valuation round, because there's liquidation preference and preference shares, and there's just a lot. So before starting out, there's a book I had that I don't remember the name of it, but it was short. How to raise a funding round. It's a small red book. I am going to remember and say it, but you can read online. Anybody can read online terms that everybody should know when raising a fund. What are the things that need to happen to raise a fund? How to create a deck. At least spend 1 month preparing a deck, the financials, the data room, and just rehearse things before you go out in a meeting. You will change things when you get feedback, but rehearse them, practice them, and familiarize yourself with the nuances of angel investing, of what is a valuation round, what is a safe, what is the exit strategy. People will ask you this. Even if it happens in 10 years, people will still ask you. And you need to have an answer. Unfortunately, you need to have an answer for everything investors ask. So treat it as a full-time job, be prepared, and read things before, and try to get on your side someone that has done it before, either on the founder side or on the VC side. So get yourself you can call it an advisor or a fundraising, someone that has just done it, that can be with you maybe just 1-2 hours a week in the beginning, can give you a few tips and tricks. It saves a lot of time and pain. Like these are the main 3, but before that, we didn't have any paying users when we first raised our first funding round, and there was a lot of questions on revenue model and why we don't make money and how do we plan to. So maybe start, or at least testing, a revenue model before that, so you have some initial data to go into the discussions with. You will not have 10,000 paying users in the beginning when you just launched, but at least you have 5, 10, 20, some initial paying traction, because we were having 5,000 users, but they were all free users, and we didn't know if people would convert into paying users. So there are a few business decisions and business things that I would do differently before starting to fundraise, not just funding specific things that I would do differently.
I understand. So I'm interested to know, so when you built the financials for what funding you need, did you price in salaries for like you and the owner? Was that priced in? Because that's quite a big topic. Yeah. So you did, because it's quite a big topic, because I see some posts from VCs saying that maybe founders shouldn't take salaries. I mean, I think if you're going to work in somewhere, you've got to obviously pay yourself, and it's the realistic commercials for that job. So you priced in your own salaries into that funding? Yes,
we did. And luckily, we found people that told us that if we don't pay ourselves, they are not going to invest in us, because then they will invest in 2 people that are worrying more about what they're going to eat tomorrow than about running the business and growing it. So luckily, we've met investors that understood that we're not going to pay ourselves 100 grand. We're going to pay ourselves. And it was in the initial financials in the first round, the bare minimum, like we paid ourselves the minimum, but we did because, somehow we needed to survive and not, be hospitalized of malnutrition or whatever. So it is a big topic. I actually do not understand why it is such a big topic, because we've put all of our savings, like the level of determination was seen of where we were at that point. We're living together. We cut costs as much as possible. We put all our savings and time into it for, I don't know how long, before we raised, at least 9 months before we raised our first round. So there was no one that could tell us how committed are these guys.
Yeah.
Right. So then everybody knew that we need to also live and pay ourselves. And someone cannot grow a company if they are not healthy, if they are not paying themselves. And I really don't understand why this is such a big topic of discussion, when when founders need to be healthy, they need to live somehow, but also not. Well, I understand a bit why it is a big topic, because maybe some founders pay themselves in the first year 200K, so that is not fair for the investor. But there needs to be a balance, and there needs to be respect and, well.
Yeah. So now you've got the funding. How often do you have to report the financials to your investors?
We don't really. Well, things evolve. So we've been through 3 rounds right now, and the last one was actually a VC combined with a few angels. We don't actually report financials themselves. We have a data room that we fill it up, a data room, or Excel with the financials that we fill it in at the end of every month, so that, because we had some projections and they want to see how we are doing from a burn rate, run rate perspective against those projections. So we keep it. We have an Excel where everybody can see any single day, and they are always updated every single month, how we are doing in terms of run rate, in terms of burn, how many months we have left, and everything. So that we don't report, we just made this. It's always updated, and people can see there any single time. We do have other reports that, evolution reports that we currently do, and how the business is growing, and KPIs reports, and I'm writing out the text. So we do that. I do that every 2 months. So bi-monthly, I update all the shareholders today with evolution and with progress and what has worked well, lowlights, highlights, what we need to improve on, what are the next steps. And I always put a link to the financials. People can see, but yeah.
Okay. So you're reporting that every couple of months?
Yes, bi-monthly, yeah.
Okay. And was that at request of the shareholder, like the investors, or was that just something you're choosing to do? Did they request that you send them updated
They
financials?
wanted me to send them. They wanted us to send them quarterly. I think quarterly. It was an easy discussion, because they didn't need to request anything, because I want to keep them up to date. So they didn't actually need to tell me, Robert, we would like to see. From day one, I said, guys, you're going to read it, you're not going to read it, it's up to you. I am going to send this to you. And so that at the end of the year, no one says that they couldn't see the evolution, I didn't keep them up to date. But it's also a way for me to keep an open line of communication to them, and ask for things, and ask for feedback, and ask for their ideas. You'd rather keep your investors involved, even if it's just a little bit, through bi-monthly calls, and them, so that you always have that line of communication open with them, and honest communication, than them not hearing from you for half a year. Things go bad, and it's going to cause issues. So I'm the person that actually shares things with them.
Yeah.
Honest and good and bad things. So. And good and not so good things.
Yeah. So you talked about an exit plan. So do you have an exit route for the business? Is that something you're setting up?
Neither. We are not setting up at the beginning an exit. We've got so much more to. We've got so much more to grow before we actually probably think of an exit. But there are a few natural exit solutions, which the main one, I think it's an exit in terms of a sellout to someone that is strategic in our industry. You could think about manufacturers, you could think of fitness apps and the big ones, and sorts of Strava, or it could be to a PE, a private equity firm at a certain point. But I do believe still that we are quite far away from an exit point. I mean, we've surpassed 100,000 users, and that is mainly in London, but it's still, it's still one city out of this whole world. We are looking to grow to the entirety of the UK. We are looking at the B2B model, which actually proves the most valuable, and a lot of potential in the B2B to C, but especially the B2B, where we are right now offering the solution to clubs, to venues, to councils, for their own members, for their own players. So there's still a lot of work to be done for us to grow and to think of an exit. But yes, it is in my back mind.
Yeah, because we've got some guests coming on in the future about exits, because one of the things when people say exit, everyone just automatically thinks full exit, but actually a lot of things we talk about is partial exit. So some people go, so it sounds like you're quite owner operated at the minute, where you and your partner are doing quite a lot of work in the business. The first stage exit for people would be, but the first stage exit would be, how can I get support to replace some of my role? If you want to, and not everybody wants to, but that's the first stage exit. It doesn't always have to be a full. The first stage would be, how can somebody else replace some of my role, which might be, you know, a CFO or more of a finance team doing some of the KPIs and financial reporting. It could be a marketing team helping you do the marketing. You know, it could be, you know, you've probably got some tech, but that would be the first stage, so that people start transitioning from being an owner operator more into like a C-suite, I suppose more of a silent director themselves, silent investor themselves. That's first exit. And then long-term exit, because ultimately in the end, if you build a business where as owners and founders, you don't run it anymore, then it comes a time where people start to think, well, actually, do I need a full exit? Because why would you sell something in full that's making money if you don't have to run it? So I think that's one of the things is
but you need to be at a good point, to be able to just leave it and then take your hands off. I mean, we do have a team of 15 people right now, and marketing, we have someone taking care of marketing. We have the dev team and the tech team is the biggest. We have someone on data analyst. So there are things that we don't need to do anymore. We have a head of product, you know, and but there's still, like, I'm doing sales currently, you know, and Bogdan is, so there's always something at the moment that I need to be operationally involved in, because we are still a startup, and I still need to do things myself, and as much as I get help from the others, and could they cover some aspects of it.
Okay, so what's the future for RacketPal then? I mean, what are you going on, any more funding rounds, or?
Most likely, because I want to tie it in with a few recommendations, and then I can tell you a bit more about the future of us. So a few things that people need to, that I wish I would have known before I started fundraising. So the moment you raise your first round, you are most likely bound to raise future ones, and you will be dependent on external capital for a long time. It is just a different journey than bootstrapping, but that is the first thing someone needs to remember, that you will always need external capital to grow. Always. You'll need a few more rounds of external capital. So the pain doesn't just stop at the first funding round, it continues with the next ones. So that is the first thing. The second one is you are married to those investors for quite a few years. And married is a weak word. It's probably sometimes more than marriage. But if there's just something that just doesn't feel right when someone offers you that money, when an investor, but the other way around, as an investor to a founder, but obviously I'm speaking from a founder perspective, just don't take the money. It's not worth the 100K, although it sounds a lot and it could save your life. If that 100K comes with someone that is just not right in the head, or whatever it is, it's just not right, it's not worth it. You'll hate your life, and you can get into legal problems. And so don't get money just from anybody. So that is like a second recommendation. And the third one, see it as a learning experience and not as I need to get this money, because it can build up frustration that you did 3 months, 4 months, 5 months went over and you didn't get the money in. And believe me, it can build up a lot of frustration, and the pressure is quite big. But if you start seeing it as, I need this money, but I'm also in a learning process, because every single funding round, you need to do research. You need to think about the projected revenues, which is, again, a lot of research. You need to build about the hiring plan, a product roadmap, a tech roadmap, etc. If you see this whole process as this plan, this 6 months is going to make my business so much stronger, and it is also going to help me with the raising funding round, you will hopefully, maybe you will start enjoying the process a bit more. It's a small thing to enjoy it, but at least you will not be putting so much pressure on yourself. And it took me 2 funding rounds to learn at the third one that, wait a second, it's a revamp of my process. It's a small pivot. it's learning those discussions. Every single discussion with these investors, you're talking to people that have a huge amount of experience, much more than I had. And they've seen so many businesses. They've worked with some of the smartest and best people in the world. The questions that they ask, it's a learning process. It's wait a second, he asked me this question. Let me look into it. I used to stay after investor calls and look into things and think about them and change a bit my approach. It's a huge learning process to speak with these people that you wouldn't actually speak to normally, with the likes of, big VC, big angels money, with people with millions. So these are the three things. And obviously the fourth, please look at it as a full-time job. It is a full-time job. It is absolutely someone's full-time job, fundraising.
Yeah. So they're your recommendations, which are really good. I think I can relate to all of them from people I see getting investment. So as we're coming towards the end of the podcast, I mean, what is plans for RacketPal specifically now?
Yes. So we still, luckily, when we raised a year ago, so we planned for a run rate of 18 months. So I don't need to go again through 6 months after 6 months since I finished. So we do plans till we've just did a small pivot and are looking to grow a bit into the B2B side, which is tennis clubs, squash clubs, the venues, the councils that own tennis courts and whatnot. So we have a solution that helps people play more racket sports, be more active by meeting people, then playing in leagues, leaderboards, tracking their scores. And so we have a solution that if people play more, it means there are more courts being booked. This means more revenue. So we can offer our solution to clubs, again, to councils, for their players and their members to use, to communicate, to chat. So we've noticed and we've had quite some success over the past months with the trials we've run. And it's going to look like the focus will be the B2B, 2C, because there's also the users that come on the app. But this is expanding that in the UK. The pilots were successful. Now we're going to focus on expanding that. In the UK, we have some discussions with clubs in the US actually as well, because why not? It's very similar, the market. So this will be the full focus. We will most likely need another funding round in 7-8 months. So 7-8, I think almost 9 months from now. But that also depends on how the B2B goes. And I couldn't give you more details currently because I don't have them. And I'm focusing on the sales on the B2B. But we had funding rounds. Again, you are bound to more funding rounds in the future. And then that's about it. Not really growing the team anymore. We've got everybody we need. We have an amazing team. So yeah.
watch out funders, because you'll be coming around to them in a few months. Well, anyway, thanks so much, Robert, for coming on. It's been really interesting to hear. I think this was definitely a worthwhile episode because there's a lot you've talked about there about resilience and working about like mindset in terms of investment. So I think that's really important. So thanks so much for coming on.
White hair and a bit of more white hair.
Yeah. And, tenacity. So, but thanks to all our listeners on the Build and Exit podcast. No, thank you. And thanks to all our listeners on the Build and Exit podcast. I'm really pleased to have you all listening. If you have any episode topics, feel free to drop us a message. And please do subscribe or rate and review on Apple or Spotify. And I look forward to seeing you soon.